Let's talk about the flip side because there is evidence that shows that emotions, attitudes, such as gratitude, can have a positive impact on areas of the brain, for example. Talk about that some.
I was in your office, as you know, a little earlier today,
Right.
and I didn't comment on it, but I noticed you have a sign that says gratitude,
Right.
don't you? And what's really fascinating about gratitude is because at first it sounds kind of corny, be more grateful and your life will be better. But what I love that you like to talk about, Phil, is what's the biochemical reason? What's going on? And what we've seen through functional MRIs and PET scanning is for those people that have practiced gratitude, and that's typically writing something down. This is how they studied it. Nearly every day in a journal, something that they're grateful for. It can be as simple as, I had a nice cup of coffee today, or I had dinner with my entire family, that they saw two areas of the brain that changed, that in some ways we could say were rewired. And the first one is the amygdala. It's a Greek word, means almond. So it's an almond-shaped area of the brain. And that deals a lot with usually emotions such as fear and anger. And what we saw is that for people that show gratitude, that area of the brain does not light up as much. It's dampened a bit. And then for an area of the vagus nerve, vagus is actually from the Latin, means wandering. What the vagus nerve does is impacts our heart rate. So it makes our heart rate go faster. It makes our breathing rate go faster. And when you're able to kind of tone down the vagus nerve, your breathing rate gets better. Your heart rate gets better, right? How do we feel when our heart's going 110 beats per minute? We don't feel so good. I feel anxious if that happens, if we're breathing too fast. So actually the biophysiological basis of gratitude is changing the way that our brain is processing emotions and then impacting our heart rate and our breathing. So that's what I think is so exciting about gratitude and why often when you see people that have a lot of gratitude in their lives, they seem happier in many ways.
Having gratitude in your life is, like you say, maybe that sounds corny, or sometimes I'll see people and say, "How are you doing today?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm blessed." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Too much.
Yeah, all right. I got you. And sometimes that sounds genuine if somebody's overcome something or something great happened in their life. But what we're talking about here is we all have a strategy. Maybe we've consciously chosen it or defaulted to it or whatever, but we all have a way of being in this world. You can watch people, maybe it's a party or a meeting or something. There'll be some people that come through the door like a house afire. Man, they just come in and they just have to be the center of attention, and it's just like a whirlwind coming in the door, and everybody looks up and they're making a lot of noise and all that. Next person might come in and they just kind of drift in like a cool breeze, and they lean against the wall and they're taking everything in. Not saying one's better than the other, but they're different ways of being in the world. I always say, whichever it is or any place in between, be who you are on purpose. Whatever you do, own it. Be who you are on purpose. If one of the things that increases your longevity, increases your quality of life, increases how you impact others, is to have an attitude where every day you find things to be grateful for. That you wake up in the morning and you just do certain things that put you in a positive frame of mind, an appreciative frame of mind. If that has a positive impact on your mental health, on your physical health, why wouldn't you do that on purpose? Why would somebody not choose as part of their way of being in the world to be grateful, to have gratitude for being alive, for having gratitude for fresh air, for whatever. I love animals. I'll be sitting at a stoplight and I'll see a couple of dogs, sitting over on the grass or in the fence. And it'll sound corny, but I have a sense of gratitude that I get to see some animals. Where I live, we call it Deerview Mountain because we have so many deer eating my flowers. I'm not grateful for that, but I'm grateful for the deer. Almost every day, I get to see a family of 4 to 6 deer walking around the property, and I love seeing those deer.
Were you always like that? Because I would argue that gratitude is also something that we can learn. It's also about perspective. And a lot of people, including myself to some degree, learned it during the pandemic, right? You could be overwhelmed by aspects of the pandemic, but I also learned I was grateful by being able to literally have every meal with my family that I otherwise wouldn't have done. I have 2 young sons and a wife,
Right.
and I normally wouldn't have had that time. So I had more time with all of them than I ever would. I actually was grateful for not having to travel so much. So I chose that perspective to some
Yeah.
degree, but I might not have always had that. So I'm curious as to whether you feel people can change their perspective.
I think they can change. That's what I mean by be who you are on purpose. We can be in this world and say, this world sucks, or I don't like the politics, or I don't like where I have to live, or whatever. Okay, you can choose to focus on that, and maybe that's part of your reality. But you can also choose to purposely find something you're grateful for.
And it can be simple that there was not traffic today coming here.
Yeah.
There was, but not as much.
Yeah.
So I was grateful for that.
And it doesn't have to be something profound.
Absolutely.
I think you can choose. I used to do skills training with people, and one of the things I had them do was write down a 65-item blessings list.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that it was so long is because I wanted them to get down to things that would seem trivial. So they began to look around and take note of things that they took for granted. The first 10 are easy. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my spouse. I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head. Those things are easy. When you get down to number 58, you have to look around and say, I'm grateful I got carpet on the floor. But you really have to purposely look around and find things that you would take for granted that you are grateful for. And like you said, maybe it's grateful that they've paved this road.
Right.
I'm grateful that I'm not driving directly into the sun. I'm grateful that I get to listen to music for 15 minutes on the way in instead of pissed that there's traffic. You can choose an attitude of gratitude, and it can make a huge difference. I think you and I were talking, and I don't know if we wrote about this in one of our op-ed pieces that we've done together, and thank you for doing those with me and sharing those with me, but there is considerable research out there that says cognitively we are about 30% more efficient if we have an optimistic attitude.
That's right.
Think about that. If you go into this life each day with a chip on your shoulder and just pissed off about something specific or just in general, versus saying, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be naive. I'm not going to be gullible. But I am going to find something to be optimistic about, something to be happy in my approach. You can be 30% more intelligent, more cognitively efficient than if you don't. Look, I need every edge I can get. I mean, I'm old and bald. If I can get a 30% edge on cognitive efficiency, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to find something, put a smile on my face. I just think people need to recognize that when you do that, that de-stresses you. And that has to lower inflammation, catecholamines, all of the different things that play into your risk for heart disease, has to lower cortisol. It's hard to be happy, optimistic and stressed out at the same time. Those are mentally, emotionally incompatible.
I don't think enough people see it that way. And that's why I think it's so important to have these discussions. And then the challenge is they're angry, they're depressed, and they feel lousy, right? Well, there's a reason why that's the case. It's not just because they're angry and depressed, it's also what impact that's having on their mind-body connection. I think other cultures have focused much more on that mind-body connection than we have, even though we've known about it for thousands of years. We just dismiss it, or we think it's not important, or it doesn't apply to us. And that's what's so frustrating.